Hey guys, hope you're doing well. It's Garland from Worst Take, aka the King of Bad Takes. Today, I've got an extra spicy video for you because we're going to be going over Denzel Curry. And we're going to be answering the question, how good was Denzel Curry actually? So basically, I'm going to be trying to go in depth on most of the Denzel Curry studio albums, and I'll be leaving some of the studio albums for a future video, depending on my rating of them, as you guys will see. I rate all of my albums on a scale of 0 to 100, 80 in my opinion being a classic, and anything above a 90 depicting an album that really stands out to me personally. I also consider 40 to be mid, so an 80 to me, like I said, is a classic, but it's also depicting like a perfect album, and anything that's like a 70 is going to be like, you know, nearly perfect. You guys will kind of get the hang of it as I go throughout the video, but my rating system is definitely a little bit different than most music reviewers. Anyways, I know this is going to be a very long video, but I appreciate everybody who's able to stick it out and make it to the end. I'll be posting my Denzel Curry final album rankings, but I highly encourage you guys to sit through the video and kind of understand my perspective and where I'm coming from, because a lot of these albums are actually very important to me. Yeah, without a further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. So Denzel Curry is a pretty young rapper who really took advantage of the SoundCloud era. He was a part of Raider Clan, which was a rap collective that was formed in South Florida, Carroll City, really, which is a very violent place to grow up in. And Denzel Curry raps about that a lot throughout his career. As far as his influences go, you can really hear a lot of the early Memphis trap in a lot of his music. Raider Clan especially, like, you could go through and literally just song for song, bar for bar would be 3 6 Mafia ripoffs. What they do is they mix that 3 6 Mafia Memphis trap with hardcore hip-hop, which is a really cool combo. They use very aggressive flows, very horrorcore inspired, very dark, punk-ish. So they mix together a lot of their influences to make something that's sort of their own. But at the same time, a lot of early Raider Clan music is going to be pretty derivative of what we heard from 3 6 Mafia back in the day. So yeah, with all that being said, let's get into N64. This album, to me, as a whole, I think that it's going to be a little bit rough to get into because the production quality is pretty low. It's kind of hard to find. It is only on YouTube as far as I know. It's not on Spotify. I don't think it's on Apple Music, but I could be wrong about that. I don't have that app. It's kind of hard to get into because the lower sound quality, the rapping is a little bit rough here and there, but all in all, there's some really great takeaways that I think it's worth checking out. So starting off with Zone 3, right? This is a song that really builds as it goes on. It's got this like very entrancing like sample loop in the back, that Zone 3, Zone 3. Denzel Curry comes in with these like super rapid flows that are pretty like, I don't want to say that they're standard, but it's kind of like that what you would expect to find from a SoundCloud rapper at the time, right? But then all of a sudden the bass just kicks in on the song and it is just ridiculous, right? The energy amps up to 1,000,000. Denzel Curry, this is like the first time that you really hear him with this just aggression and rage, and you're going to hear this throughout the album. I mean, this is what makes Denzel Curry who he is and what makes him special as a rapper. While he may not have the best lyrics or the best flows like ever, he's still a talented rapper who really makes his mark in the aggression and in the energy that he brings to the track. And Zone 3 is a fantastic intro to really put you in the area of where Denzel's coming from. The instrumental here is very inspired by 3 6 Mafia, and so is like that sample loop in the background, something you hear all the time from them. Denzel just brings some pretty like violent bars on here, which really ties into the whole horrorcore and hardcore experience, and it brings like this sort of edge to it, this darkness, which was matched by the instrumental. So I think that's really awesome here. The next song, Parents, is really interesting as well because this is the first like story song that Denzel has, and it's just about people who grew up with poor parenting. It's a woman who's stripping, a man doing drugs, you know, gang violence and all that. A lot of things that Denzel Curry probably grew up around, and this is a very interesting song to me because, again, the whole album is about Denzel Curry's like upbringing and childhood, and he incorporates a lot of that into the music itself. It sounds like the sample of this song sounds like an old video game, right? Like you're crawling through the dungeons of a cave, and it's got that grimy sort of, it's got a good like twist on it, so it's dark version of that. So I find that really interesting how he's able to relay this message and project his childhood not just through his own lyrics but also musically. That's something that I really look for in music, is when you have both elements. Unfortunately, Parents is one of the first songs in this album that you start to hear this trend of Denzel where he's rapping too fast and you can't really understand his lyrics all that much. Like, I bet the lyrical content here is a lot deeper. Maybe there's some bars I could pick apart, but without me looking up the lyrics, which I don't typically like to do, it's really hard to hear what he's trying to say, which I think is really important. If you cannot actually relay your message to an audience without them looking at the lyrics, I feel like that's kind of a flaw, sort of a miss. So Denzel's kind of inability to really have that diction in his vocals, even though his flows are super fast and catchy. Like the flows are great, but it's just the fact that he needs to sort of pronounce his lyrics a little bit more, and which is something he ends up doing and getting pretty good at later on in his career. So Parents also ends with this super awesome outro that's almost like Kid Cudi inspired. It's really cool, and it really transitions well into Dark and Violent, which this is, I mean, just as the title suggests, is a pretty dark and violent song, right? It's got this the super like dissonant background, these like notes that are playing on repeat. It's got this, again, like this horrorcore atmosphere. It's got like guns clicking and this like super high pitch, like the very distinct snare that you hear in a lot of that Southern Florida trap SoundCloud era. Like, just think about X, right? That early X SoundCloud stuff. That's that type of vibe that you get from this beat. It's really cool. And this song actually features a beat switch after the first feature, and it's got this absolutely ridiculous Nell verse, right? Nell comes in right on the beat switch, and it is just crazy. He fucking rips this song apart. It's a very like slow burning feature, but it's awesome. Just it really, check the song out. This is one of the main highlights for me. So the lyrical content of the song is basically Denzel and a bunch of friends go off and rob somebody, and they end up killing some people. He mentions that there's 13 shots and 2 dead. I found that kind of interesting because later on in Denzel's discography, you hear a ton of mentions of 13 being the number. So I haven't really looked into this too much, but I think that there might be a connection there. Maybe that's reading in a little bit too deep. Anyways, moving on to Threats, which is probably the biggest hit from this album, the one that you guys probably know if you haven't heard this one yet. This song is noticeably mixed a lot louder, which is, it kind of strikes you right off the bat. So again, there's a little bit of an issue with the mixing there on this album, which, I mean, you can't really blame him. It's his first studio album and probably pretty low budget, but it does kind of change the quality, right? Because you do have to turn the song down. It's pretty loud. Denzel is just super fucking aggressive and angry, and I love it. He's got this hunger to him, and this is just a great banger. It's just a super good trap beat, great features. This song is just, it fucking slaps. Music video to this goes hard. Check it out. I saw Denzel in concert, and he played this song, and I went fucking berserk. No surprise that this really blew up Denzel. So then we get Mystical Virus Part 3, The Scream. Here it obviously starts off with a scream, and it's got this super like horrorcore. You got that like weird creepy synth in the background that's playing those like horror notes, you know what I'm talking about? I don't know, it's got this little Ugly Mane feature, which is another rapper that Denzel takes a lot of inspiration from. But yeah, he's featured on the song, which is pretty interesting. That's cool to see. I think that the second feature on here is really not the best. This song doesn't really like hit it for me. I think that the beat's just okay. It's a little bit too minimalist for me. There's not too much going on here lyrically. It's about somebody who used to be a killer, and now he's wanting to kill himself, and then you hear a scream. I mean, I think it's okay, but as far as like the actual bars go, it's not really told in a clever way. So I think that this is one of the lesser songs. This is probably the worst song so far on the album. Not to say that it's bad. I would still listen to this, but I do think that this is a notable dip in quality from the rest of the album. So one thing that's interesting about the song is that it actually has a thunderstorm at the end, and it transitions kind of nicely into Widescreen, which is the next song. And it, I don't know, this song, it's just kind of like a showcase of Denzel's flows and it's just kind of like a freestyle sort of thing. It's not bad again, but there's nothing really too crazy going on lyrically here. But Denzel does bring pretty good aggression. Honestly, his flows, they actually sound like Aesop Rock, and I don't know, it just like reminds me of that. It's a like underground type of style of flowing and rhyming. And maybe there is more lyrically going on, but I just can't hear it because Denzel doesn't really have the diction yet, or maybe it's just a poor production quality where I can't really hear his consonants. But it's kind of hard to make out certain words when he's rapping this fast. He ends up finishing off the song with mentioning how he's like hallucinating and tripping and everything, which is a good segue into the next song, N64, which this song actually builds into it instrumentally. It's got the N64 beat, but with like strings instead of the piano. So speaking of N64, this is probably my favorite song on the album. It's really incredible. There's a lot to dig in here. So just instrumentally, like straight up on like a bass level. So it's this very like sad piano beat, but it's sharp, right? And it just all of a sudden just cuts out into this like very looming bass that just really catches you by surprise. Again, it's that horrorcore. It's very dark and mysterious, but it's got these drums and like tambourines in it that are super like realistic. It adds a super like grounded feeling to it. But again, this is one of those songs that is about Denzel's upbringing. That grounded feeling to the beat is very like essential to the meaning of the song. And Denzel raps like a fucking psychopath on this shit, right? The bars are kind of all over the place and frantic, and it all feels like a bad trip, right? Again, like he was saying in widescreen, right? It's just hallucinating, it's a bad trip, psychosis type shit, right? His bars are all over the place. He's frantic. He's rapping about a million different things at once. And I think that wouldn't work in most songs. It would be filler in a lot of songs, but here it works really fucking good because, again, it's about losing your mind because there's so much shit going on around you. This, again, it's the title track. It's N64. It's nostalgia, and N64 also being the video game console, which Denzel loves video games. I got my Nintendo sweatshirt on because he said it multiple times in interviews he's a fucking nerd, which is awesome, and it's just a key part of his childhood. And this song really digs up a lot of trauma, a lot of things that he's been through. There's a little portion of this song that cuts out for a news broadcast about Trayvon Martin's murder, which, if you guys remember, Trayvon Martin, that was like a huge deal across the nation. Denzel Curry grew up around that, right? I don't know if he necessarily knew him, but it happened in his city, right? His murder, which is super interesting and fucked up. That this was something that Denzel Curry grew up around. We later hear later on that this actually affected Denzel even more personally, as one of his family members was a victim of police brutality. Basically, Denzel is just going crazy on this song, and there's so many lyrics here that I can unpack, right? You got the Pokemon bars, which again are it's weird to have in a song, but it makes sense here, and it's bringing back his like inspiration and his kind of the groundwork of who he is. But it's also layered in with this imagery of hobos shooting up heroin and people getting killed and stabbed. Meanwhile, he's rapping about fucking Charmander. It's like there's this dichotomy here of Denzel being this nerd who just wants to enjoy life and play video games, but then he's got to deal with all this shit going on around him. He also mentions, I think this part is pretty interesting, mixing that Slayer with that Tupac shit. That is really cool because, again, that's like his two sides of who he is, right? But he is mixing that hardcore rap from Tupac, that gangster rap, and the metal from Slayer, right? That thrash metal. So it's super interesting, all these lyrics. There's so much to dive into this song. So up next, Denzel Curry actually comes in with a love song, which, like me, is pretty good. I actually really enjoy this song. I know some people might not, but I actually really appreciate Denzel's lyrics here. I think that this is one of the few songs where somebody is rapping about actually loving a female. Whoa, we actually care about women. Whoa, and not just like fuck that bitch. Like, I don't know. It's it's refreshing to hear somebody actually like be like, "Oh, I'm in love with you. I want the best for you. I don't want to just fuck you." Like it's refreshing to hear that for once. And so I really appreciate that from this song. I think that the chorus is really nice. It's very sentimental beat, but it slaps. This song slaps. It's a good little R&B cut. Denzel kind of sings a little bit at the end, but it's more like harmonic rapping. It's not really like singing. I don't know. I think he does a pretty good job with this. I think that even though this is not his typical aggression, he flows really nice. He actually has better diction on this song than on like most other songs. And so it really makes you think that he's really rapping about something he cares about. Yeah, this is a very good highlight for me. I think this is one of the best. This is probably the best Denzel love song that there is. Not really like there's a lot of those, but I mean, hey, that's something, I guess. Anyway, so moving on to Benz, I think that this is just what the fuck. This just squashed everything that Like Me did, because this is the opposite. This is the fucking opposite. This is the most 3-6 Mafia that Denzel Curry has ever gotten. I think that this is just not it's not that good. I don't think that the rapping's good. I don't think the lyrics are good. It's just a 3-6 Mafia song, just a little bit worse, right? Because it's not 3-6 Mafia doing it, it's Denzel. And so I think that this is one of those songs where he kind of clings a little bit too close to his inspirations. However, then we go on to Denny Cascade, which is this like cloud rap inspired song. And I think that's also pretty interesting because that is another direction to bring this album in. So it's this like stoner Denzel. He's rapping about his LSD and weed and addictions. And it's got this really addicting vocal loop in the background. Again, it's just like cloud rap cut. It's pretty nice. I don't think it's necessarily like incredible, but I think it's good enough. And finally, we have A Day in the Life of Denzel Curry Part 2. So this song is another cloud rap inspired one. It's a very soft ending to the album, which I found a little bit odd because, again, for the rest of the album, Denzel's coming with this aggression, and then from Like Me and onwards, it's super soft and cloud rappy stoner energy, which is interesting. I like the way that he's trying out different things. This song is pretty gas. This is better than than Denny Cascade. I think the beat here goes fucking bananas. Did I really just say that? I think the beat here goes fucking bananas. Yeah, I'm gonna say it with my fucking chest because it does. The diction again is not the best. It's got this really rapid section of the song where he's just spitting, but you really can't understand what he's saying. Again, the flow is like it's pretty good, right? It's talent, but it's not all the way there, right? So like I don't know like what you call it, but the beat has got this. It's a rapid hi-hat roll. I don't really know like what you call it. It's almost like a drum roll sort of thing. Like a lot of like 2010s trap had that. And it's got that, but it's like muted in the background, and then it pairs with these hi-hats, and it's just such a good beat. This is like real good fucking cloud rap. And I think that Denzel's cadence here really works pretty well with it. And on the backside of this cut, you have Denzel singing to close out the album, which I think is also an interesting choice. It's sort of like a soft and sweet way to end the album, which is like an album about, again, like a lot of gang violence and all this. So it's a very unique direction to bring it. All in all, I think that Nostalgia 64, despite some of the rapping and some of the lyrics being a little bit off from Denzel, I think that he puts together a really solid performance with a bunch of unique takes on the Memphis trap, the hardcore, the cloud rap genres, and really sets himself as a very distinct rapper who has a lot to bring to the table. So overall, I'm going to be giving Nostalgia 64 a 64. All right, so I'm going to skip past 32 Zell because I don't have the original version of the album, and I think it would be unfair to you guys for me to give you guys my opinion on the remastered version of it because it excluded a whole half of the album, right? Planet Shrooms. So I am not going to be going over that one in detail. The lead single from that album was Ultimate, which obviously was a major point in Denzel's discography and really helped him blow up into the mainstream. Unfortunately, that would be like his last big hit for a while because it did take him a while to drop the album after Ultimate release, so the hype kind of wore off, and it was sort of viewed more of like a meme song at the time. It's still an incredible track. Some of Denzel's hardest bars today. He's just spitting on that song. His aggression is just unmatched. I mean, the second verse on that goes insane. It's crazy Ronnie James production. I mean, it's it really is one of Denzel's top songs even today. And it's kind of sad that it's kind of viewed as a meme, the bottle flip challenge and shit. So overall, though, I do give the remastered version of 32Cell a 46. And for me, a 46 is a little bit above mid, right? I think that it's fine. It's passable. It's a little bit weaker than N64. There's some content to be dug up there, but again, I'm not going to be going too in depth on that. So next up, I have another album I'm not going to be going too in depth on because it deserves a video in its own right, and that is Imperial. And real briefly in this video, I'm going to give you guys like the spark notes as to why I think Imperial is such an incredible album. It has one of the hardest intros ever, and that is ULT. As soon as that doo-doo-doo hits, it just sets the tone so perfectly for the album because it's dark, it's mysterious, it's a good spin on trap. It's got such a catchy chorus, right? The rapping is incredible, the bars are incredible. ULT is really just such an awesome intro to this album. But then it just keeps going, right? A lot of the qualities you see on ULT are consistent throughout the album. This album just never lets up, right? Even on the songs that are slower in tempo, Denzel still brings really great performances, like on This Life and Me Now and Zenith. These performances are still incredible, even though they vary from his very aggressive rapping, and I think that that's a huge step in the right direction for Denzel in his career and his development as an artist. So yeah, I really do think that this is one of the best hip-hop albums of the 2010s. The choruses throughout this are so fucking catchy. The rap performances throughout this are incredible. There's so much aggression here. There's so much emotion. There's so much lyrical content, and that's why this album deserves a video on its own, which I will be producing and dropping sometime later this week after this video drops. Overall, I'm going to be giving this album a 94. And again, every album above a 90 those are the albums that I'm going to be making solo videos on. So this will be the first one that gets that on my channel. So after Denzel Curry released Imperial, it took him another year to drop a short mixtape called 13. Again, the number 13 being a big part of Denzel. Not sure what the connection is. Hopefully one of you guys can figure it out. But this was a pretty cool little mixtape. There's only 5 songs on here. I'm not going to go too in depth, but I really do love Bloodshed, Hate Government, and Zelltron 6 Billion. Pretty cool features on here. This is just a pretty hard-hitting mixtape and a good little drop. I'm not going to rate it because it's only 5 songs, but just know that this did happen, and Denzel kind of had this release pattern of dropping short mixtape or short album into long-form album, and he was pretty consistent with that all the way up until today. So I thought this was a pretty cool moment in his discography. Okay, and after he dropped 13, Denzel Curry went ahead and did something very unique and dropped 3 separate little LPs and eventually combined them all into Taboo. Again, with the B split up into a 1 and a 3, 13, again, connection there. Denzel Curry's Taboo is an album that, maybe a couple years ago, I would have had it as one of my favorite albums of all time. This album, I feel like for me, dropped right when it needed to drop, right? 2018, just going through a lot at that time, and the emotional content of this album really latched to me. However, going back to this project, I do think that it's just a little bit rough around the edges on some songs. So we're just going to be going through this album more in depth than the other ones in this video because I do think there's so much to unpack here. There's also a good lesson to be learned on how concept albums are not always a good thing, right? They're not always executed to perfection. So starting off with the title track is where we get one of Denzel's saddest, most down-to-earth, introspective songs. It's a very slow, sad cut of him singing, right? He's mainly singing on this, and when he is rapping, he's rapping with no aggression here. He's rapping from like the soul. It's like this rhythmic rapping that's really great to hear, and he does it excellently. The performance on this song is incredible. The lyrics are also really good, but there's one lyric here that I really don't understand in the concept of the album, which we'll get into later, and that's the start of the song. It's welcome to the darkest side of Taboo. I feel like maybe there might be an explanation for this later on in the album, but we'll get to there once we get through the rest of the songs. But just keep that in the back of your mind for now. As far as this one, Denzel really opens up about some of his past traumas in here, which it's kind of confusing at times because he switches perspective kind of mid-bar at times, right? He's talking about himself when he's talking about trigger warning, but being molested, but he's talking about presumably somebody else when he's saying that Curry kills the pussy, hoping that I can kill the hate in you. There's some lyrical inconsistencies in this song that keep it slightly confusing, right? It's still a great song. I love this song so much, but the lyrical content and the message, it gets a little bit lost just because of how confusing it is to the listener. I mean, again, I've listened to this album so many times, and still it's hard for me to really piece together what's going on here because, again, the perspectives get swapped between just mid-verse, and there's no, like, vocal changes or anything to really express that other than the lyrics being said. So moving on, we get Black Balloons, which is this really incredible boom bap, like, again, very softer R&B cut. These super interesting songs to come from Denzel Curry to start off the album. This really ties into the messaging as well because this first disc, which is the first drop of the album, it's supposed to be the light side of Taboo, which is, again, contradictory to the beginning of the title track, which is Welcome to the Darkest Side. This is actually the light side of Taboo. Yeah, Denzel really has a great performance on here. There's a pretty cool verse by Goldlink at the end of it. All in all, this is just a very sweet, sentimental song. The black balloons representing this pain building up inside of you, and you're all good right now, right? It's all happy. It's like a balloon, I guess, from like a fair, but eventually it's gonna pop, and it's sort of things that we're keeping inside of us. So there's a pretty good message to be heard in this song. All in all, I think this is one of the stronger songs in the album. So moving on to Cash Maniac. Cash Maniac is also just a banger. I really like this one. Denzel's flows are hilarious here because it's just he's rapping with so much joy. This is more joy than we've heard on Imperial like at all. This is just Denzel in his bag. Bars are, they're okay. I think that there could be a little bit of improvement there, but overall it's got a great chorus, and I think the flows are on point. The beat's on point. This is another banger. Then we get Sumo, which Sumo was one of the singles to release from this album. I think that it's okay. It's just a brag rap, flexing song. I don't really like Money on My Mind like a tumor. I don't really like that bar. That one's kind of weird. Denzel's like screaming, like he's like scream rapping here, and it's pretty cool. You don't hear that really a lot in hip hop, so it's really cool that he brings us to the table. It's very unique to him. I do appreciate that, but overall, I think that Sumo is somewhat of a miss because, again, I just think that it's a little bit corny and on the nose. Like the chorus, just listen to the chorus. That's kind of all I have to say. But it's fine. It does go hard. It's just a little bit corny. You just kind of have to have fun with it. It's one of those songs that you really have to just kind of turn your brain off because it is supposed to be just like a brag rap flexing trap song. So there's nothing really wrong with that in concept. But again, you can't really like dig too deep into the bars here, or else it's not really going to be that enjoyable. Then we get into disc 2, which is the gray area of Taboo. So it starts off with Super Saiyan, which I think is an odd choice again, because this is another flexing song, right? There's a few bars in here about people switching up on you, which the gray area of Taboo is supposed to represent Denzel realizing the things around him are not as peachy as he thinks that they are in the light area, but the gray area is like that mental state of doubt, I guess. And Super Saiyan doesn't really portray that all too well. Again, it's another like flexing song, and the bars here are kind of subpar again. I would like to hear a little bit more lyricism from Denzel at this point, but the flows are on point, and the beat is very minimal. It's not really a lot going on here. It's kind of like a repeating couple notes. So I think that this song is fine. I don't think it's bad, but I think it's fine. So it's another one of those songs that kind of keeps this album out of the top tier for me. Then we get Switch It Up, which I was going back and forth with. I used to love this song. Then I hated it, but now I kind of love it again. It goes fucking hard. This is one of the hardest like trap beats that Denzel Curry has ever rapped on, and Yeah, he really kills it on this. The lyrical content's really nice here, if not a little bit corny with the delivery sometimes. I think that his flows make up for it during the verse. I actually do genuinely like the chorus, and I think that this is one of the better songs on the album. Now that I'm going back to it. Next up is Mad I Got It. This is another song that kind of had to grow on me, but overall, this is an incredible song, super underrated on the album. It features this beat switch at the end where Denzel Curry, for the first half of the song, is rapping about people mad at him for his success and wanting to leech off of him. But then the beat switches out to somebody else's perspective where everything in their life is causing them to have, negative thoughts, desiring other people's wealth, and really questioning their own livelihood. And that's what causes them to become jealous of others. And it's really a good introspective piece and a good take on society, really. Mad I Got It is pretty strong lyrically. It's pretty strong with the flows. I love the beat switch at the end, especially when it breaks down and it gets super grimy and kind of reversed. It's really, really great stuff. It's honestly a really beautiful song. Yeah, it reminds me of Sick and Tired from Imperial, which is an incredible compliment. So yeah, coming up next, Denzel drops what might be a top 5 Denzel Curry song all in all, and that is Sirens, featuring JID and Billie Eilish on the chorus. So Sirens is just a monumental piece of work. I mean, this is like really, really next level shit right here. It's a political piece about how the system is fucked up. There's so many metaphors being thrown back and forth between Denzel and JID. It's kind of crazy. The story of the song was that Denzel, I believe he had just his verse, his first verse, and then he sent it off to JID and was like, hey, I want you to rap about, try to cover the same lyrical content about the government and keep metaphors in it and everything. JID snaps so hard on this beat. It's just like really energetic and sad, which is a weird combo, but it works. Piano beat. And it's got that chittering in the background. I don't really know how to explain it, but it works super well. The bass is crazy. This is a really, really good, strong instrumental. And Denzel's first verse is awesome. I love the flow on this. Love the flow. I love the lyrics. The lyrics are incredible. His diction, the way that he's soft and he flows into more aggression, it's really, really good stuff. How he's able to really control his vocals and his emotions and build it throughout the verse. Not just using dynamics, but also using the timbre of his voice. That's really good stuff there. And JID just totally snaps on this. And Denzel Curry ends up, once he gets JID's verse, he hears it and he's like, yeah, I can't let you show me up like this. Which, to admit that JID had a better verse than the first Denzel verse is pretty crazy, because JID's verse is out of this world. It's fucking stellar. Again, same thing where he's flowing out of his mind. He's got this entire metaphor running throughout the entire verse, and it's really just incredible. And Denzel was like, fuck you, I am coming back even harder. And he does. He matches JID. I won't say that one's better than the other, but Denzel's final verse of the song, where it just goes a cappella, the beat slowly fades out and just turns into the piano, into nothingness. And he's just still spitting about the government and murder and how he is getting mentally unstable, how everything is fucking him up in his life. It's really so emotional of a verse. And again, his rage, the way he's able to scream his vocals is so good. It's so good. Really give this song a listen if you haven't already. This is the one big takeaway from this album, honestly. And Billie Eilish on the hook is also really good. Her vocals are layered in with JID and Denzel, so it's kind of hard to hear that it's her, but it is. And funny enough, Denzel and Billie Eilish actually went on tour together after this. But anyway, Sirens is the highlight of the album. It's It's so good. And finally, on disc 2, we have Clout Cobain, which I actually was really not a big fan of at all. This was my least favorite song when the album came out, and it was a single leading up to it. But I did really respect the fact that this was Denzel's second big hit, right? This helped propel Denzel back into the mainstream, I would say. It's a good song. It's a good take on rappers in today and rap community. People in rap in 2018 were really overly supportive of SoundCloud rappers who were taking Xanax and basically just killing themselves for clicks, right? They were selling their soul. They were like just doing crazy shit that was going to fuck up their life. And a lot of rappers died, right? I mean, just look at it. A lot of rappers died even after this song came out, which is crazy to think about because it almost foretold the future in some ways. The music video really helps this song, I think. For me, I understand that he had to really dumb it down to make it popular, to really spread his message, and I do appreciate that from Denzel, but I think the beat is just a little bit too generic. It doesn't really do anything for me. Denzel's rapping on here is fine, but I wasn't really a big fan of his vocal inflections at the start of the verses. But the chorus does go pretty hard. I do enjoy that. Overall, I'd say I prefer the music video with the song than the album with the song. But it does fit quite nicely into the gray area of the album where, again, Denzel's trying to really question his surroundings and starting to that black balloon that he mentions in the light area. The black balloon is really starting to swell. And this is when we get into the blackest balloon, which is in the black version of Taboo. And here is when Denzel is at his angriest, right? He's through with it, with this world, is pretty much what the message here is. He is pissed off at society for making him feel this way. And the blackest balloon really is like just a critique on society rather than, I mean, Clout Cobain is as well, but the blackest balloon it's not there for clicks, right? This is one of the least popular songs on the album. He's just not really like exposing, because not really anything to be exposed, but he's just rapping about issues in the community again. One of the best bars on here is "Ain't shit changed since Lil Peep died." Yeah, I mean, it's true. It really is true what he's saying on this song. But again, I don't really think that this is like it. I don't think it makes for the best song musically. I think that there's stronger cuts on the album. I don't really like the beat at all. I think that Denzel's rapping is just fine here. It's not really as aggressive as you would kind of want from this, although I do think that it is a good first song in this disc. So coming up next, Denzel has Perks, and Perks fucking blew me out of the water when I first heard it. It's still really good, but holy shit, this is one of the hardest, loudest bass lines. This fucking instrumental comes in with the aggression. It just beats the shit out of you. It doesn't stop, and it's real fucking good. In the rapping, the flows, Denzel's on a fucking perk on this song. He really is. Fucking bar for bar, it is just so good. The second verse breakdown is so good. The bars are, again, they're just so on fire. Really, Perks is one of the main highlights of this album, honestly. Probably my favorite off of the third disc. But then we go into Vengeance, and Vengeance is also really fucking good. Vengeance is just a story about just fucking killing people. That's all it is. It really is just Denzel and Zillakami and JPEG just going around on a fucking murder spree, and they do that vocally as well. I really want to talk about Peggy here. Peggy kills this verse. He destroys it. His vocal inflections are always so good. JPEG Mafia discography review coming soon, by the way. But his vocal inflections are always really fucking on point, but they just hit so different here on this beat. This beat is just the way that it transitions between that vocal sample chorus, which goes so hard. It's almost like a Suicide Boys song. It's very emo rap. Everybody has a good verse here. This is my favorite Zillakami verse. This made me try to look for Zillakami songs that I liked, and I'm sorry. If you're a Zillakami fan, I don't mean to offend you here, but I don't think he's good. I think that he snaps on this song, and it got my hopes up for him. So I really tried looking, and I couldn't find a good Zillakami song outside of this. So if you guys have any recommendations, please just send them my way in the comment section below. But Black Metal Terrorist is the final song on the album. It's a very odd song with its progression, right? Because it starts off super soft, sort of like singy, and then it has that transition, and then it's just straight in for it. And it's got this like metallic-y, it's very like, again, it's grimy. That's like the best way I can really describe this, but it's like that high-pitched horrorcore sort of metal sound, right? It's super cool, the way that this instrumental is. Denzel, again, is just rapping with like just fucking ferocity, right? But then it cuts back into that lighter section again, which I think is pretty cool. I wish that it was more fluid, but I don't think it's bad the way it is. I think it could be more fluid, but it's not bad, because it is a very bold jump between like the softer sections and the harder sections. I mean, it's a good send-off of the album. It really is just Denzel at his most like pissed off, I guess. So this song actually ends in static, and Taboo, the title track, starts with static. So realistically, this is supposed to be played on a loop. So that might explain the lyric that I was talking about at the start, where welcome to the darkest side of Taboo. But again, you're saying welcome to the darkest side of Taboo. This isn't the first song on the darkest side of Taboo. It's the last song, if the looping theory is what's actually going on here. So again, there's lyrical inconsistencies. I think that some of the songs don't really fit within the discs. I think that Cloud Cobain, I guess it's fine in gray, but it could go in black. I think that Super Saiyan makes more sense in the light side of it. Taboo makes more sense in the dark side of it. I mean, the whole idea is that this mental state will loop back and forth over and over endlessly. So Taboo being at the start, I mean, it makes some sense, but with the lyrical inconsistencies here and the lack of really depicting what the discs of Taboo actually mean inside of the album, because I mean, I've been describing it to you guys, but really, if you listen to this album, you're not going to get that. You're going to get, oh, there's 3 different discs. One of them is a little softer, more R&B cuts, but not even really, because you get sumo in there. And then one of them is more grimy trap cuts with more aggressive lyrics, and then the other one is more metal rap. I don't even know if that's really a word or a genre, I should say, but that's kind of what the last disc is, and it's very aggressive. So like you would get that, but you wouldn't really understand what the point of it is unless you really do some research on it and listen to interviews. And I think that is kind of a flaw of the album. I really do think that if your concept album cannot relay its message and concept inside the album itself, I think that's a problem, right? It's different. Like a good example of a concept album done right is just To Pimp a Butterfly. It's the easiest one to think of, where Mortal Man sums up the entire album while not being condescending to you. It's not being like, oh, this is the message, right on the nose. Giving you the poem throughout the album really helps out with the message as well. The lyrics throughout each song, bring together the message. But on Taboo, you kind of get an arrangement of different lyrical content, none of which really relating to what the album is about. The closest thing being Soon Black Balloons Pop, Let It Be the Day the Pain Stop, and that is on Black Balloons. But even then, that idea of Black Balloons is not explored further. I only knew that Black Balloons referred to his mental state and the trauma he was holding inside once I listened to some interviews about the album. So overall, I think that the musical content here is really good outside of like a couple songs that I think are mid. I don't think that they're bad. I don't think there's a single bad song on this album, but I think that there's some fucking peak here. I think that there's some really good takeaways, like Sirens, like Taboo, like Black Balloons, like Perks, like Vengeance. Those songs are such good takeaways that this album still is really, and I hold this album in high regards, and I really do appreciate Denzel trying to put together a more sophisticated, a more, I guess, consistent concept album that is very different and branches out from what he's been used to throughout his career. So overall, I'm going to be giving Denzel Curry's Taboo a 79. So that is right outside the 80 range, which 80 I consider a classic. All right, new shirt, new day. Sorry if you guys can hear my AC in the background. It is way too hot in here to be recording this video without it on. Denzel Curry's next studio album, Zoo, is a huge change in pace for him as an artist. On this project, he completely changes how he's using his aggression and his almost like scream rap style. He's, instead of projecting a bunch of anger and distaste for like things around him, he's using his persona to just bring this new level of energy and hype to tracks that is really fucking awesome and makes this sort of era, 2019, 2020, Denzel Curry really stand out from the rest of his discography. And this is also when he starts to add in ad-libs to his rap, and those ad-libs, again, bring in so much charisma. They're hilarious. They're just a great addition, and they're some of the best ad-libs of any rapper, in my opinion. Gotta be like top 10. I don't know. I had to make a list on that. Basically, Zoo is a very overlooked project just because of the fact that it wasn't a concept album the same way that Taboo was. This album has a lot to offer in its own right. There's a lot of really, really great tracks here. And it's also a very consistent, sonically sounding album. So it's got this very 90s Miami vibe to it. And this is really heard a lot on the song Wish, which is just, the production on this is just to the fucking moon. I can't even describe to you guys how good of an instrumental Wish has. And also, Denzel Curry's performance is incredible here, too. It's this, like, melodic rapping that his voice sounds so good on this, right? We kind of only heard this on, like, Black Balloons or something, but he really just takes it to another level here. The song's got so much energy. It's such a vibe. I've never been to Miami, but this is what I would imagine it feels like to just ride through the streets of Miami with the windows down. It's like the evening, sun's going down. Like, this is exactly what I would think that feels like. This is just such a good song. I will say that Kiddo Marv's verse, I think the lyrics on it are a little bit rough. Probably could have used some more work in the lab. He even reuses a pretty weak Denzel Curry bar from Taboo. Yeah, I don't know. But in general, he brings a lot of good energy and blends really well onto the track. So I think that Wish, just in total, is so good. Especially the little breakdown at the end. This is one of the highlights of the album. Going on to like the two leading singles of the album, Ricky and Speedboat. I think that Ricky is, again, it's one of Denzel Curry's biggest hits ever. And I just never really was that big of a fan of it. I think it's mainly the production that I'm not too big of a fan of. I think that the rhythm, the percussion on here is a little bit too, like, one note. And I'm not too big of a fan of, like, the melody in the instrumental. And, I think that Denzel Curry's rapping's fine. The chorus does get a little bit annoying if it gets overplayed, which, again, as one of Denzel Curry's biggest hits, this song did kind of get a little bit overplayed. But the lyrical content here is pretty good. It's just about Denzel Curry's role models growing up. And so I think that it kind of saves this track from being one of Denzel Curry's weaker ones. And I think it's just an okay track. I'm not really the biggest fan of Ricky. But Speedboat, on the other hand, is ridiculous. When this song came out, I was so hyped for this album because this was just something so different. It's that energetic trap that I was talking about with Denzel Curry, but it felt grander, right? He even made a movie about this song, right? I say it a movie, but it's like a 10-minute video, right? Check that out. It's super cool. Puts a lot of perspective on it. But really, the lyrics, again, are about people selling their soul, making deals with record labels, or kind of doing whatever they can to make money. And it's very interesting to hear about the people that Denzel Curry grew up with. The lyrics here are incredible. And there's a lot of very witty bars on this song. Denzel Curry's singing is some of the best that we ever hear up to this point. I really, really love the spiritual, like, little bridges in here. The chorus is also incredible, super catchy, hard-hitting bass. The piano is like, it's got beautiful melody. This is one of Denzel Curry's top tracks of all time. Going into some of the other songs here, I think that Birds is one of the weaker songs on the album. The Rick Ross feature is really what holds this one back, in my opinion. He does not match this beat. I'm sorry. I don't know. I can't tell if he's offbeat. He feels offbeat, but he also feels like he's just one note going along the beat at the whole time. Like he's talking, he's not rapping on here. And that could work, but not when you have a beat like this that's supposed to be hard hitting. I feel like you really need to hit your consonants and enunciate them with the beat on this type of track. But Rick Ross just doesn't do that, and I think that the song really suffers from it. It's not even like the instrumental is that good to begin with. Denzel Curry's part is fine. He's got a good flow in here, and the chorus is pretty good. So again, I don't think it's a bad song, but it's not great. Automatic is just it's just Take Keith. I mean, this is every single Take Keith beat is pretty much going to be the same. He's the same exact Take Keith snares, risers, and whatever else Take Keith uses, right? His stupid kicks, and it's just the Take Keith beat. So it's fine. It's just a typical trap song from 2018, 2019. But Denzel Curry kind of slides on it, you know. He's got a very different approach to this song, very different diction. He's got a very different tone on this as well. So I think that's interesting to hear, but it's not really anything too crazy. It's not really like brag rappy, but it's sort of like a very generic topic to be rapping about. It's like fake friends and, you know, got to get that money sort of thing. It's nothing too crazy going on here. Then we go into Bushy B interlude after Speedboat, and this is so good. I wish that there was a full version of this song. It just sounds heavenly, man. This is just like, especially after Speedboat, it just like makes me fucking float. But I do think that it's a little bit weird to have another interlude, or I guess a skit right after the interlude, and that is Yo. It's really funny, and I like the inclusion of it on the album, but maybe not right after Bushy B interlude. I think that this could have been put a little bit earlier in the album, maybe like after Ricky. That would have been pretty good. Yeah, it's funny. It sets the tone. I like it because moving on to Carol Mart. Carol Mart's also a very funny song. There's so much energy here, so much charisma. Again, the instrumental is very odd. It's kind of wacky, but Denzel Curry does his thing on it. The Ice Billionberg chorus is real good here. And it brings up another thing that I really appreciate about this album is that it's not just an homage to Home, but he's also giving features to smaller artists that he probably grew up with or was inspired by, right? I'm pretty sure Ice Billionberg was somebody that he was really inspired by growing up. And that's really cool to hear him on a Denzel Curry song because, again, it's like paying respect to your hometown. Then we go into Shake 88, which the story behind this song is real funny because obviously this is like it's supposed to be like a club banger sort of like mixture hybrid. But the story here is that Denzel Curry didn't know what to write for the song because he wanted something like this to kind of represent like the clubs down in Florida. But he didn't know what the fuck to write. So he reached out to, I forget who wrote it, but somebody else had to write it. And it's like one of the only Denzel Curry songs that somebody else wrote almost the entirety of it. Because Denzel doesn't write like this. He doesn't rap like this. But I think that he does fine. I think the chorus is so funny. It's a good song. I wouldn't say it's like underrated or one of the best songs on here, but I don't think it's bad at all. I think it brings a good energy to it, and again, this whole album is just like there's a lot of charisma here, and this song really adds to that. And then we get into PAT, which is the final track of the album, featuring Play That Boy Zay. Holy fucking shit! This song makes me, I start fucking jumping whenever I hear this song. This instrumental is one of the hardest instrumentals. It's got this distorted bass. Denzel Curry fucking spits on this. Like, the effects on his vocals just go crazy. His screaming on here, this is like the vengeance of this album, but even harder, right? Zay has a verse on here that is just so fucking good. I want to run through a brick wall whenever I hear this verse. This just invigorates me. He goes so fucking fast. He's aggressive. His flows are fucking incredible. I can never get enough of this song. The one-liners here are also hilarious. Sticks out like I'm Voldemort. That shit gets me every single time. Well, again, I think this is probably the third best song on the album, though. This album's got a lot of heat to bring to the table, and overall, thanks to the great energy that Denzel Curry brings to the album, he's super consistent throughout it. I do think that some of the features are a little bit underwhelming, And I think that some of the production gets a little bit too samey at times. Like, I feel like there's some very generic trap snare and kick patterns here and there that don't really sit too well with me. But other than that, all the samples, the Miami influence, it's pretty good production. It's very unique to Denzel Curry's catalog, and I think that's what I appreciate about this album the most. So I'm going to be giving this album a 70. So in 2020, following Zoo, Denzel and Kenny Beats teamed up to drop just only an 18-minute project, Unlocked. This is one of my favorite producer-rapper collabs ever. The charisma, the way that Kenny and Denzel blend together on this album is so fucking peak. There is very few producer and rapper collabs that have the same level of energy where you can really hear. It doesn't just sound like a rapper who's rapping on a bunch of beats that could have came from anywhere, right? This has Kenny Beats' own flair to it. It really sounds like he is performing with Denzel Curry, right? It feels like a duo, and it's a power duo too, because they really, really fucking kill this. Some of the best examples are on like songs like Take It Back, where Denzel Curry will have just a standard verse where it's very like freestyle. It's kind of off the cuff. The bars are just witty one-liners that stick and are very memorable. And then Kenny Beats will take that and chop and screw it, and you get the beat switches, and it's so fucking good. The energy here is real. It keeps up. It's awesome. I do think that it's sometimes maybe there's too much inspiration coming from Mad Villainy, which again, if you have an album that kind of copies Mad Villainy but can do it in a good way, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But again, it does kind of sour this a little bit, that this sort of the vocal samples that are kind of thrown in throughout this album and edited, it does kind of sound a lot like Mad Villainy. And so I think that kind of knocks it down like a point or two for me, just because it's something that's already been heard. And I think that those vocal one-liners are pretty cringy at times. Like, I don't know, one of the examples is like, I told you, you can't fuck with this. This is God level. Like, all right, it just makes my skin crawl. Like, I don't like that. It's not good. Other than that, like, if those were not in this album, or at least were nowhere near as frequent, this is just like this is just incredible, right? This is even though it's only 18 minutes long, which is another gripe that I have with the album, is that it's too short. We could have used like a full-on like 30 to 40-minute album, I feel. But in general, like, again, a lot of these songs, they just feel freestyled, and that's a great thing. It's so impressive. Denzel Curry's flows and his energy. I mean, this is just who he is, right? I feel like I say this about every single album, but I feel like he keeps upping himself every single time. He's always improving. And it's another example of him switching up his style. Like, Denzel is very underrated as to how much he's changed his style over the years. From his humble roots of Nostalgia 64, just transitioning all the way throughout Imperial and Taboo and Zoo and up until this point, it's just so cool, his progression here. As far as like big takeaways from here, Cosmic and Take It Back are my two favorite songs off this album. The rest of them are also very solid. I don't think there's a bad song on here either. There's not really too much to say about this, sadly, because again, there's not much lyrical content, and it's only 18 minutes long. So overall, I'm going to be giving Unlocked a 78. And finally, moving on to Denzel Curry's newest studio album that came out in 2022, we have his Melt My Eyes, See Your Future. This album really blew me away when I heard this. In the past, right, Denzel Curry was very angry. He had a lot of emotions, a lot of things on his chest, a lot of trauma he had to really just vent out in his music. He grew into a person that kind of let a lot of that go and was very energetic, and it just was just having fun with his music, which was amazing to hear. If all that's true, then this is the album where Denzel Curry comes kind of into his own and is very mature about his sound. This is a fully realized album to me. It's one of the most consistent albums from Denzel's discography. This is really where Denzel lyrically comes into his full self. There's a countless number of just mind-boggling bars on here. I mean, this is just ridiculous. Like you got on Worst Comes to Worst, they draw guns, but how could lead erase us? On Ain't No Way, you get I run the jewels because I kill a mic on every LP. What the fuck? And there's just so many of these. Walkin' has like a quadruple entendre. It's just so good. There's so much lyrically to this album to unpack. It's got this beautiful jazz-inspired theme to it. I say jazz-inspired because I don't know if I would really consider this jazz rap. It does have some like jazz instrumentation to it, but I wouldn't really consider it to be like jazzy in a way. I don't know if that really makes sense, but I guess like structure-wise is the best way to put it. But the jazz instrumentation is just beautiful throughout this album. It's got such a great soundscape and vibe to it, and it keeps that vibe very consistent for the most part. Melt Session 1 is just a beautiful intro. It's beautiful. The choir to start it off, the way that it fades in, it really just sets the energy for the album. Denzel Curry's lyrics here are just, again, heartbreaking. This just reminds me of Taboo, the title track. The lyrical content here is very dark and serious, and it really sets the mood for the album to be something more reflective and less just talking about past trauma, but also talking about personal growth and overcoming of that trauma. Denzel really raps about personality, his flaws in himself, and how he's growing to improve from them, and how that trauma, right, such as the events like that were mentioned in Taboo, and how events like that just really affected him as a person. And it's just super heartbreaking, but also inspiring to hear this from him. This album, I might as well just say this right now. This album came out at a really, really impactful time for me. Again, same thing. Like, I felt like I could really, really relate to this. And this is kind of a recurring theme with Denzel Curry. It's kind of weird. He's always ended up dropping right when I needed it the most. So I'm very personally attached to this album. But anyways, we'll get into that later, because I really want to talk about the instrumental on this. It's so good. It's that boom bap mixed with jazz rap, mixed with just live instrumentation. It's just so good. The choir, the cloud rap influences here. It really just feels like all of Denzel Curry's influences coming together throughout this album to really make something special. And special it is because the next song, Walkin', is just it's just mind-blowing, right? This is Denzel Curry's best song. The triple entendre to start off the song, walking with my back to the sun, keep my head to the sky, me against the world, it's me, myself, and I, like De La. Got in touch with my soul, trading softly on a path down the rockiest road. Life isn't ice cream without monopoly dough. Just, the property grows in value, and rightfully so. I gotta have it. Go back and read every single one of those. It's references to different rap songs, right? It's actually the lyrical content of what he's talking about, right? You know, walking down this path of life and growing his soul, and just the De La Soul, the play on words here, the monopoly dough, right? Dough, money, rocky road. It's just, I can't even describe this to you. And it's the whole song, right? This is the first, like 5 bars. It's the whole song. I would be sitting here forever if I were to dive into every single bar here, which I will eventually be doing. You know what? If I'm giving this album a 90, I'm giving it a 90. Fuck it. This is one that really does deserve its own separate video. So I'll be coming out with Imperial and Melt My Eyes, See Your Future videos separately throughout the week. So please subscribe and stay tuned to make sure that you guys don't miss those. This album lyrically is just incredible. It's so consistent. Denzel's performances here just, I can't even, like, it's just a different type. He's not even energetic. He's not even angry. He's just rapping from the soul here. It's mature. It's beautiful. I don't think that this album is without its flaws. I think that Ain't No Way is kind of a miss until Denzel Curry comes in, because his verse at the end is something just real special and incredible. But the story behind that song is a little bit muddy. So again, stay tuned for when I kind of dive into that more in depth. The real key takeaways here, though, are Walk In, the Melt Session 1, and X-Wing. The overall themes of this album are really important, too, and also kind of coincide with another album that dropped this year, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Just the themes of personal growth, struggling through addiction, and overcoming your past traumas and letting go, and then spreading that message to everybody else and helping others move on from past issues. It's just such a powerful message, and so I'm giving this album a 90. All right, guys, so that wraps it up for Denzel Curry's discography. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing me yap for. I haven't edited this down yet, but it seems like this video is going to be a long one, probably over an hour. So I really, really appreciate you guys for sticking out to the end. I'm going to be posting my final rankings on the screen over here. So if you guys disagree with any of my takes on this video, just, be sure to let me know in the comments. My name is Garland, a.k.a. the King of Bad Takes. Again, I appreciate all you guys listening. Make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, like. It really helps out the channel a lot. And I also want to say thanks to everybody who checked out my 25 worst albums of all time. I know that people had some very strong disagreements with a lot of my placements on that list. So, I'm willing to make some videos about some of the albums I talked about there. So, again, yeah, I really appreciate all the love you guys have been showing. Like I said, you guys have been watching Worst Take. My name is Garland. Hope you all have a wonderful day. See ya.